Welcome to meeting number 14 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities, pursuant to orders of reference of April 11th and May 26, 2020. The committee is resuming its study of the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's meeting is taking place by video conference, and the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. The webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you are ready to speak, please click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. Before I get started, I would like to remind everyone, and especially our witnesses, to please use the language channel of the language they are speaking. So if you're going to switch back and forth from English to French, French to English, you need also to switch the channel before switching languages. I would now like to thank the witnesses for joining us today. With us today, we have appearing as an individual, Mohammed Kehani, Associate Professor, Entrepreneurship and Strategy at the University of Calgary. And from the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, we have Matthew Wilson, Senior Vice President, Policy and Government Relations. Professor Kehani, please proceed with your opening remarks. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Hello, and thank you for inviting me here today. It is an honor to be speaking to the members of Parliament and the broader Canadian public. My name is Mohammed Kehani, and I'm a professor of entrepreneurship and business strategy at the Haskayne School of Business, University of Calgary. I want to highlight and make recommendations on two issues today: digital skills and international students. In the past several years, I have focused my teaching and research efforts on digital technologies for the next generation of entrepreneurs. Technology is rapidly changing the nature of how we launch and operate new and small businesses. An entrepreneur today has to know what a Slack channel or a growth funnel or a Zapier Zap or an API is, or will be quickly falling behind the global competition. Canada knows that it has a digital divide problem. The COVID-19 pandemic has further highlighted the importance of digital skills and the digital economy. I want to point out that the Canada Training Credit Program can be used for the purpose of responding to the sudden increase in demand for digital skills due to COVID-19. I want to encourage all working age Canadians to take advantage of the Canada Training Credit to improve their digital skills. 2020 is the first year that this credit is available, and so can be leveraged by Canadians to respond to the new normal. This program was inspired by Singapore's Skills Future program. In response to COVID-19, Singapore has doubled their training credits this year, and I recommend Canada also considers increasing it, especially if it can be used for digital skills. This would also help highlight the Canada Training Credit program once again to Canadians who may not be aware or have forgotten about it in the midst of COVID-19. This concludes my first recommendation. On to my second point, I want to argue that international students should be covered by CESB. The COVID-19 crisis has prompted researchers and entrepreneurs across Canada to focus their efforts on coming up with solutions to the various issues around the pandemic. I've been fortunate to be able to join research teams in the University of Calgary and help them commercialize their COVID-19 response technologies. One of these startups has been able to receive Health Canada authorization to produce a 3D printable nasopharyngeal swab to address the shortage of such swabs in Canada. Another startup has been able to apply leading-edge microfluidic technology to create test kits for COVID-19 virus and immune response diagnostics. This technology has been supported by a generous CIHR grant from the government. I am proud that researchers in Canada, right here in the University of Calgary, have the capabilities to develop these technologies. It has been truly inspiring to work with these tireless researchers who get up early in the morning every day, including most weekends, to go to the lab and stay there long into the night while the country is in lockdown. I want to highlight an interesting fact about these research teams that I've been working with. Most of them are international students. Of the few who aren't international students, most of them came to Canada initially as international students and eventually gained Canadian permanent residency. After the tragic incident earlier this year where a Ukrainian flight was shot down in Iran, I was asked by two journalists, how could so many brilliant scientific minds be on one flight? To me, this was an indication that perhaps we as a country do not fully grasp the extent to which international students and scholars are contributing to Canada. In fact, Professor Mojgan Danishmand of the University of Alberta, who died on that flight, had working relationships with our team and would likely be contributing to our COVID-19 diagnostics project today if she were alive. She came to Canada as an international student 20 years ago. Economically, it is estimated that international students contribute $22 billion annually to the Canadian economy, and their presence here fuels 170,000 jobs. Canada is competing with other countries globally to attract international students. Many of them choose Canada not just because of the quality of education, but also because of its reputation as a multicultural and tolerant society. Many people, including many higher education professionals and administrators, have been disappointed by the government's decision to exclude international students from the Canada Emergency Student Benefit. There are about 640,000 international students in Canada, and many of them do not need CESB because they have funding support from scholarships or other institutions. But many of them do need the CESB and are finding themselves in financial stress. These international students have multiple disadvantages to deal with compared to most Canadian students. First, they pay tuition fees that are about 3 times higher than Canadian students. Second, they typically have no family here in Canada to rely on, no place they can go to stay with their family to avoid paying rent now that everything is online. Third, their family back home is finding it difficult to support them financially because many of them have also been impacted by COVID-19. Fourth, many of the kind of jobs that these students took to support their studies in Canada are the kinds of jobs that are hit hardest by the COVID-19 pandemic. Canada is a caring country, but if we fail to take care of our international student population now, it may impact our reputation in the global race to attract international students in the future. Our universities depend heavily on international students as they have been the main driver of growth in our higher education sector in the past decade. For this reason, I recommend that Government of Canada consider including international students, at least those who don't have tuition waivers, scholarships, or other significant financial support in the CESB program. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Professor Kahani. Next, we have Mr. Wilson from Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. You have 10 minutes, Mr. Wilson. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for inviting me to participate in today's discussion. It is my pleasure to be here on behalf of Canada's 90,000 manufacturers and exporters and our association's 2,500 direct members to discuss COVID-19 in Canada's manufacturing sector. Today, I will stress the importance of the existing wage subsidy program, the need for expanded programs to support the full restart of industry, and the requirement for a national manufacturing strategy that contains a skills component. CME's membership covers all sizes of companies, all regions of the country, and all industrial sectors. From the early days of this crisis, we've been working with our members and governments to increase the manufacture and supply of critical PPE and healthcare technologies needed in the response. We have also been educating and informing manufacturers on the latest developments in the crisis, including on how to access government supports, how to protect their employees and their supply chains. And we've been working to understand the impact of our sector and advocating for policy, regulatory, and program supports for our sector from all levels of government. Throughout this crisis, the role and importance of Canada's manufacturing sector has never been clearer or as much discussed. Hundreds, if not thousands, of manufacturers have switched their production to support making critical PPE, such as masks, ventilators, and face shields and gowns. And many in our sector are aggressively working on developing better tests and a vaccine for COVID-19. Despite the current challenging climate, unlike other sectors, most segments of manufacturing have been able to continue to operate throughout, albeit at much lower production levels. Through the first 6 weeks of the crisis, through to the end of April roughly, output had dropped nearly 10% and actual hours worked had declined by 30%. Worse, roughly 300,000 Canadians of the 1.7 million directly employed by our sector had lost their jobs. Those job losses were heavily concentrated in sectors where consumer demand plummeted, namely automotive, aerospace, and energy-related sectors. However, if it were not for the actions of the federal government, those numbers would have been much, much worse. And because of those actions, the numbers are beginning to get better now. The most important action taken has been the wage subsidy program. When CME first began calling for the queues, we had in mind that companies could maintain operations and their payrolls so that they were in a stronger position from which to recover coming out of the crisis. We believe it is achieving those results. In a recent survey of our members, nearly 85% fully supported government actions, with nearly 55% stating they were using the queues specifically. Far and away the most used program, with tax deferrals coming in a distant second with roughly 30% use. The heavy use of this program can be linked back to the reality that manufacturing can continue to operate, but they are operating with significantly reduced volumes in sales. Sustaining their workforce would have been impossible without the wage subsidy, given the high overhead cost of maintaining manufacturing operations. Today, we're hearing from our members who are rehiring thousands of Canadians as they look to restart their production. By our count, queues have been a massive success. This does not mean, however, that the program is without flaws. There are two big challenges that our members have noted that I want to raise. First, companies who sell to interrelated parties, such as a subsidiary selling to a parent company. And second, companies who are acquired by a second company are restricted from using the program. We're working finance officials on these restrictions and hope a solution will come soon. Outside of existing program challenges, it is important to note how eager companies are to get off the subsidy program and return to normal operations. Many companies are planning for an exit off the program as soon as the original June program elimination date. Those companies should be applauded. Unfortunately, many other companies will be reliant on the program beyond this due date due to depressed economic conditions. The extension of the program to the end of August is welcome news, but more will need to be done. It is likely that the program will need to be extended beyond this date. However, this time there should be a timed and revenue-based phase-out plan included. More specifically, we believe the program should be extended to January 2021, and the amount of the subsidy should be reduced in lockstep with an expected improvement in company revenues, and the government should lower the revenue loss threshold for qualification from the current 30% back towards the original 15% before being eliminated altogether. This extended and smoother transition will allow companies time to adjust and not push them off a revenue support cliff, which could cause them further harm to them and their employees. There are two other areas I'll mention before closing. The need for an additional industrial support in dealing with new health and safety guidelines and the importance of skills development as part of the manufacturing strategy. The first, as industry begins to fully ramp up production, there's significant additional cost that will be borne by companies, yet revenues and output will not match historical norms. Companies will be investing in training staff and operational requirements, providing PPE in much greater quantities to staff, and installing protective barriers and other physical distancing tools. Government should introduce some sort of direct support program to offset these costs. Second, as governments look to answer the call and create national industrial strategy that focuses on growth, investment, and innovation in manufacturing, a critical component of that strategy must be human capital. While people are among Canada's greatest assets, the lack of the right skilled workers and labor in general has become a major obstacle to growth of our sector in Canada. The shortages are widespread across the country, across all jobs types, and across types and sizes of companies. If companies cannot get the right skills, they cannot leverage the latest technologies, they cannot innovate, they cannot invest and grow. Governments need to include as part of this industrial strategy, a skills strategy that looks to get more youth into the sector, to help companies upskill their existing workforce and to allow companies to attract the best and brightest from around the world. Thank you again for inviting me to participate today. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. We're now going to begin with rounds of questions, starting with Ms. Cusey for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And Professor Kenny, it's good to see you after meeting you in San Jose, I guess almost 2 years ago now. And as well, I was very interested in your comments in a recent discussion about Canada going forward into the world after this pandemic. I wanted to know, in your opinion, what new trends you think we will see in the labor force emerge as a result of the COVID-19 working environment, please.
Thank you, Ms. Kutsi. It's an honor to see you again. In terms of trends in the labor force, I think it's clear that digital skills is going to be very important going forward. Everybody kind of knew that it's going to be important, but the COVID-19 pandemic suddenly pushed this trend by leaps and bounds. I think sometimes when we talk about digital skills, people immediately think about coding skills and computer science degrees and that sort of thing. But I think we need to have a broader view. I train my students in the university and entrepreneurs in using different digital technologies to improve their businesses. And it is surprising, especially in the past decade or so, how many of these technologies that previously required some sort of coding knowledge and programming skills no longer do. It's just a matter of using drag and drop tools that anybody can use and learn, but a matter of playing around and learning a lot of these tools. But in terms of the entry barriers for learning them, they're much lower. They don't require computer science degrees anymore, a lot of them. And this trend is going to be increasingly like this in the future. It's a matter of general digital literacy, an openness to try new things, and an awareness of all the different, how the landscape of tools available is changing. So I think that's going to be an important trend down the road. Automation is going to play an important role. A lot of jobs are under the threat of population. There's been an estimate that 1 in 10 jobs in OECD countries is in danger of automation very soon. But I think as with previous waves of technology that have displaced other technologies in the past, a lot of new opportunities will be created. We have to train our students even before the higher education level at elementary and high school to not only learn the tools that are available, but learn, to be able to play around and learn with new tools as they become available. Because a lot of the tools that they will need when they grow up and get into the job market don't even exist right now. But we have to make sure that once they get there, they have the skills to learn them very quickly.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. So I personally believe, coming from global affairs prior to being in the House of Commons, that there is a global reset that will happen in regards to everything from diplomatic relations, but to supply chains as well. And I do believe the skills that you've made reference to play a significant role into what Canada's role in the New World economy will be in the future. So what could the Government of Canada do specifically in an effort to prepare our workforce, in particular young people in our workforce, for this New World economy post-COVID-19?
I think incorporation of various digital skills and technical skills into the learning curriculum at lower levels will be a good step. I'm not completely on top of the extent to which this has already happened, but I know that up to a few years ago, a lot of schools were voluntarily incorporating some of this material and some of this digital skills training into their programs, but it wasn't in the official programs that they were required to follow. So that will be an important factor. The kind of facilities like the Canada training credits that I was referring to in my opening remarks are useful. Although it's not a perfect solution because people have to wait until the end of the year and the tax filing before they can get their sort of expenditures reimbursed for their learning using that. And a lot of people may not necessarily use those credits for the kind of skills that we think are necessary to jump into the future. So there could be potential modifications or facilitations around that program, which encourage people particularly to move towards digital skills training or upskilling.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Ms. Cusey. Next, we'll go to Mr. Turnbull, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to both the witnesses for being here today. Really appreciated your opening remarks. Mr. Wilson, I'm going to start with you and ask you just a couple of questions, and then I have a couple for Mr. Kayani as well, and hopefully we'll get to those. Mr. Wilson, I know that your CEO at CME has mentioned just how many of your members are likely to apply for the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program. And then you mentioned in your opening remarks, I think a survey that you did, which you said about 85%. So that's really good to hear. We also heard expert testimony earlier this week from Professor Kevin Milligan from University of British Columbia. And he said, and I quote, "I hope we will start to see people maintain their income through the wage subsidy rather than the CERB, because the wage subsidy is a way to rebuild the economy." I think this is a really important point, and I wanted to ask you, looking forward, do you agree the wage subsidy will help your members retain and re-engage their employees, helping them transition back to the workplace?
Absolutely. In fact, well, just to clarify the numbers, about 85% of companies said that they fully supported the government action across the board on all measures they've taken, and that's federal and provincial. About 55% of our members said that they use the wage subsidy program, which is a substantial amount of companies. So it's got broad use in the manufacturing sector. The CERB benefit program, though, has been a very different type of program. We were worried at the very beginning on the potential distortion effect that program could have in our sector. I won't talk about other sectors which were much harder hit by COVID-19 than we were. But what we were worried about was if companies don't retain the relationship with their employees, it becomes a lot harder for them to restart. And so before the wage subsidy program was announced, before the CERB benefit program was announced, we were talking to officials saying, do not do an EI type of a system, which is what it turned out to be. Have a direct wage subsidy like we saw in Europe and other parts of the world, because it would maintain that relationship. And the companies already have payroll, and it's really easy to handle it. And I think the government recognized pretty quickly when the CERB program was put into place that it caused, frankly, a pretty significant amount of layoffs across industry, all industries. And they immediately went to a wage subsidy program, which actually caused a lot of our members to recall furloughed employees only after a week or so. So I think it worked immediately. Secondarily, it is working. I know we had a conversation on Monday with Minister Morneau, and with several companies, Fiat Chrysler, for example, being one of them, who specifically said they start up operations at all 3 of their Canadian plants on 1 shift because of the wage subsidy, and would be moving to 2 shifts. So that's just one specific example on one statement just this week, but we're aware of many companies who are doing that because it's there. Wage subsidy isn't there, they won't be recalling those people, and many companies, frankly, probably would shut their doors.
Great. Thanks for that. I really appreciate that, and it's great feedback for us. And I really appreciated your comments about how to maybe phase out the wage subsidy in a gradual fashion, and I appreciate those comments as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Made in Canada manufacturing solution, and I think, you know, COVID-19 has certainly highlighted just how important domestic capacity is for our supply chains and our manufacturing sector. I know that personal protective equipment, test kits, and ventilators have obviously been in high demand, and global supply chains have been stressed, to say the least. And so, again, this highlights the need for domestic capacity. What steps, and I know, I should say, I know the Canadian manufacturers and exporters have long been a champion of the concept of increasing the capacity of our domestic manufacturing sector. What steps has the federal government taken so far that have been helpful in realizing a Made in Canada manufacturing solution?
So I think some of the short-term measures they've undertaken, they're trying to stand up domestic supply chains, leveraging investment support programs, for example, to help companies retool and scale up production of PPE. But those are really, really short-term measures to deal with the short-term critical nature of the supply. There needs to be a much longer-term strategy, and this isn't an overnight thing. You mentioned we've been talking about this for a long time. I've been for this committee several times in several different iterations over the years talking about this as well. It's critical that we actually have a big industrial strategy for Canada that includes skills, that includes a Made in Canada component. So much of it, though, is driven around technology, as Ms. Kuzi was talking about earlier, and how can we improve our domestic competitiveness to be able to manufacture for any type of crisis in the future? If we focus just on, oh, we didn't have enough N95 masks for this crisis, how can we make more of them? What happens if the next crisis isn't about N95 masks? We need to have a domestic manufacturing capability that can respond to any crisis. We need better technology, we need more investment, we need more capability. Maybe more importantly than anything else, we actually need to understand what we make in Canada and what those companies can do. The problem in standing up the domestic supply chain for the PPE was twofold. We actually don't know what our capacities and capabilities are in manufacturing in the country. No one tracks that type of thing. We know roughly how many people work in chemical manufacturing or auto manufacturing, but knowing what type of chemicals and what they could be transitioned into is very different than knowing they make chemicals in the first place, as an example. So we need to understand that. And second, we need to have much stronger procurement rules, both in terms of Buy Canada, so that we're supporting domestic production innovation, and two, centralized and coordinated, so that a company isn't supplying a local hospital, but is supplying, say, a regional or national or provincial healthcare network.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Thank you, Mr. Turnbull. Suite, nous avons Madame Chabot pour 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank the witnesses as well. I have a question for Mr. Wilson. I know that you have appeared in front of the FINA committee, and you seem to say today that if we could have maintained the activities, it's thanks to the programs like the wage subsidy program. However, you also talk about the less work in some activity sectors, and that we will have to wait until 2022 before we get back to par. How do you see the solutions? Does that mean that solutions like the wage subsidy program is a short-term solution that have results, but that won't have any effect in the midterm?
I apologize. It was hard to hear everything that was coming through, so I will do my best to answer your question. If there's a follow-up, I'll try. I think what I understand, though, from the question is what type of transition do we need, and how do we look longer term if we're not expecting a full recovery, economic recovery, manufacturing recovery, really for almost 2 years? What do we need to do? We really do need a multi-staged approach. I think the approach to date has been really about the immediate crisis containment. Make sure we have an economy to go back to after this is over, when things restart, and whether that's being able to go out to lunch at a restaurant, or whether that's manufacturing or something like that. We need that baseline industry there, and the response really has been about that. The second phase, though, really needs to be about how do we start getting recovery. A big part of that recovery is about the immediate recovery will be about boosting consumer spending. Consumers account for 60% of domestic economy. If they're not spending money because they're uncertain about their economic futures, or they're unwilling to go out of their house because they're afraid that they're going to get sick, there's a huge problem. So we need to think about those kind of medium-term transitions. A little bit longer term, I think what we're calling on governments to look at is actions that will support longer term economic growth. So infrastructure spending, for example, that will boost, that will not only boost short-term demand for products, but also longer-term growth in the economy. Trade infrastructure is a great example that our ports and rail lines, pipelines are clogged, and we can't get goods to market or into the country in a lot of cases to feed manufacturing. So those things will be important medium-term actions. Longer term is where you need to have the bigger industrial strategy that's going to look at how are we going to leverage technology, for example, to reshape industry and society to take advantage of all the opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Now let's talk about jobs, specialized jobs. You yourself talked about innovation, and innovation goes through human resources, human capital. In another life, I was at the Commission of Partners of the work environment with the manufacturer sector, and we know that it's important. But don't you believe that the response also comes from workers who already have a job, not only those that are in school, and that the training at work is important, and in the sector are the salaries competitive enough to push people to stay at work?
Apologize if this isn't a full answer, but I would say I think two parts to this answer. One is technology and innovation is rapidly changing how manufacturers operate. You yourself understand that, and the most members of the committee do. And our workforce, in a lot of ways, is not keeping up to that. And so we've been a long-term proponent of much greater supports for companies to do in-house training. Things like work integrated learning programs, which started under the last government or expanded under this government, really, really important to tie that connection between the education institute and theoretical knowledge that people get and the on-the-ground practical knowledge that people are getting, whether they're students or whether they are, or whether they've been on the job for 30 years. Technology is changing, and we need to support those companies in the transition towards technology so they can be more competitive. But most importantly, we need to support those workers to make sure they can take on the new jobs and the new technologies that are reshaping manufacturing in all parts of our society. And I hope that does answer your question.
I would add the necessary transitions in the industrial world and is in recovery. We'll have to do transitions with the workers. It's important. Updating, training, skills development. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madame Chabot.
We have Ms. Kwan for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for your presentations. Just want to follow up, Mr. Wilson, on the whole issue around re-entry. I really like the idea and the proposal that you made about the gradual support, if you will, of wage subsidy. So some of the businesses today, though, they are already calling for that, even for them to qualify for the wage subsidy. Some people have missed qualifying by just by a hair. And so would you support this kind of call as well, both in getting into the wage subsidy at this point, as well as exiting the program?
Yes, I'm not sure. Most of our companies, most of our companies that we talk to qualify. Their production was down, 30-40%, and their sales were down so much. I'm not sure about other sectors of the economy, but that 30% as I call it, and I think others have called it, a revenue cliff, is a substantial problem and probably should be softened. We called early on for that to put in the 15% in the first month, and we're happy to see that. So yeah, that's potentially something that we could look at, certainly on the way out of this. If you have it at 30% and you leave it there, and you don't soften that to kind of wind it back down, maybe towards 15% revenues or something like that, it's going to have a big impact, because companies will not, they won't be able to operate if you have that 30% number sticking in there. So what we're suggesting is not just go kind of keep it at 75% subsidy if you're, say, have a 20% decline in revenue. Maybe it's a 50% support if it's with a 20% decline in revenue or something like that, but certainly some type of tied together formula that would be pretty simple to administer for government and for business, that recognizes and supports growth in revenue and that transition off. So, and that could be something, frankly, you could start introducing today. There's no reason why you couldn't soften those numbers, but have a lower subsidy. Instead of just having it at 30 and 75%, maybe you have it at 20 and 50. And I'm just putting out numbers, but you could have some sort of a different scale on there as well. So yeah, I think we would support something like that. And certainly on the way out, it's going to have to be there.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that would make a difference. And I think that the amount of subsidy would be proportional to the amount of revenue loss, right? So you can tie the two things together as a scale, and so that's good to hear. Yes. The other thing as well is that I'm hearing from the small business community in my own area, although not in the manufacturing sector, but I think all the businesses will be critical for our recovery. Some people actually are starting to have problems in accessing plexiglass, as an example. As we're talking about re-entry, you need to create different workstations and so on and so forth. People can't access to that material in addition to personal protective equipment. I wonder if you can comment about that issue.
Huge issue. We use a lot of the same equipment in manufacturing that hospitals use. N95 masks is a good example of that, but also those types of face shields and other things. They don't have to be, in some cases, they don't have to be medical quality, so they can be a little bit easier to obtain, but it's still a huge problem across the board. We've actually partnered with a group called the Rapid Response Platform, RPP, and we're helping thousands of companies every day to make these types of connections. We don't need big government programs to do this. The private sector stepped up, did it. It's all free. And so I would encourage people to take a look at that. We have no gain in it whatsoever. We're promoting it to our members to use because we were getting those questions. And what we were doing actually was manually matching companies. When we knew one company had stuff and someone didn't, just through our own informal network, we were doing it. But this is a much bigger public platform and has been very helpful. As I said, I think yesterday I heard the number was somewhere around 2,500 companies made matches just one day alone. So it's working really well for the private sector.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just wondering too, from the from the local businesses, people who are trying to re-enter and so on, some of them actually are not sort of in the network, so to speak, because they're small in their scale. And how to actually access this material becomes a major barrier. And perhaps there can be some coordinated effort between levels of government and the private sector to figure this out. Because if those businesses don't survive, our local community don't survive, which will impact, of course, the manufacturing community overall.
Agreed 100%. I don't know what else I could say, but yeah, absolutely. And there needs to be, certainly through groups like CME, local chambers of commerce, we're trying to coordinate and do this type of work. But it still is, if you're not part of a network, it's very hard to get that information. I guess it's a good reason to join private sector associations like ours. But it is part of the benefit of being part of that network. But I'm sure all of your offices are probably getting swamped with these types of questions. And there are a lot of good resources. Certainly in the manufacturing sector, we've created our own website, which consolidates all the government information and the best private sector information we can to help them. For example, what does return to work look like safely in a manufacturing environment in a COVID-19 world? What type of barriers need to put in place? How do you protect your employees? We've written guides on that. We have done extensive work on it, and we're providing it free of charge to anyone who wants to go on our website and get it. Those tools are invaluable to small companies who don't have internal resources. the tools are out there. You just have to know where to look in some cases.
Yeah, I think it just also speaks to the importance of access to paid sick leave, because some people don't have access to paid sick leave. I know it's not the case for all companies, but that certainly is the case for some. And I've had constituents in the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, they had to actually quit their job because they could not access sick leave. And so they did not feel that they could put others in jeopardy because they had symptoms, and although they didn't know if it was COVID, but still they were concerned about it. So I just want to flag that as an important component to make sure that we get that in place.
Thank you, Ms. Kwan.
Oh,
thank you. You're past time. Thank you. Next, we're going to go to Mr. Viss, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And Mr. Wilson, you've said a lot today that requires a lot of additional analysis, and I think all of the questions and answers so far have been very, very helpful, and I've been taking notes trying to rewrite what I was going to ask you as we moved along. But first off, I think it'd be safe to say that had we not increased the wage subsidy from 10% to 75%, a lot of our manufacturing sector would be struggling even more than they are right now. Would that be correct?
That's very much so.
Okay, excellent. On GM, the government did announce that they were going to produce 10 million masks, but there's been other estimates stating that Canada needs about 3.3 billion masks. How is Canada's manufacturing and export sector adapting to meet this challenge?
So in the survey that I mentioned, we actually found that almost a quarter of the companies that responded had shifted to manufacture some type of PPE, face shields, masks, gowns from right across the country. The response has been incredible.
Yeah.
It really has been. I think Canada should be incredibly proud of what the manufacturing sector has done. Certainly, I am a longtime advocate for the sector, so of course I'm always proud of them. But I think it really has shown the critical value that manufacturing can bring to the country. At the same time, I don't think we need to shut ourselves off from the world and say, oh, we need to make all this stuff at home. I think maybe a slightly different, and in part because we're never going to be able to manufacture everything we possibly need for any type of crisis. And so those trade agreements and our relationships with other countries are really, really important. I think it was regretful what happened, obviously, with the United States through part of this, but thankfully, it got sorted out through a lot of hard work by a lot of people. But something that we've talked about with some officials, for example, is could we create something like a Defense Procurement Act like we have with the United States to introduce something around PPE and other critical devices?
That's actually that's an excellent point, and it actually brings me to another question I wanted to raise. Given the events that have happened with China this week, and some of the things we've been hearing in the media about the possible trade sanctions and a frayed relationship, how do you think Canada's manufacturing sector can play a role in improving Canada's security by either enhancing our trade relationships or ensuring that we have enough domestic supply to meet the needs, not just for COVID-19, but for other crises down the road, as you mentioned?
I think there already is, I think, a growing demand. I think there's been a shift away. Like China became kind of in vogue about 20 years ago when they entered the WTO, and it became easier to get stuff into our market because it was a low-cost manufacturing jurisdiction. They're not as low cost as they used to be, and I think we found through this and other events that they're also not a stable, secure supply of key things at key times. Yeah. And that's not just for PPE, that's also for sub-assemblies and other things that manufacturers use and they import or consumer products and other things like that. So I don't think the demand for China and Chinese goods and their role in global supply chains is going to change immediately. But I think over time, there's going to be a real opportunity that there's going to be a shift in both consumer business and government demand for more locally made products. And I don't mean just by Canada, I mean probably more by North American type of approaches, leveraging things like the Canada, US, Mexico Free Trade Agreement, bolster up the domestic manufacturing capacity within this region to supply ourselves first and then export from there. And we were super thrilled. In that agreement, there's a very little known clause, Chapter 26, that talks about domestic, quote unquote, North American industrial competitiveness. And it is basically how are the three countries going to work together in domestic competitiveness? And that's the key. If we don't fix our competitive imbalance that we have with China and the rest of the world, we never will stand up the size of manufacturing sector that I think we can or that we deserve.
Thank you. I'm just going to go into a couple more questions really quickly because I'm on short time here. You mentioned consumer spending as part of a recovery approach. Would you, in the last election, the Conservative Party considered bringing back programs for, say, an efficient furnace or replacing windows at home and getting a grant from the government? Would you guys be in support of similar programs moving forward to help bolster consumer spending?
I think there's a number of things that have been out there that governments have used over time of all stripes. Cash for clunkers is another one, home renovation tax credits, efficiency tax credits, all of those would be welcome. It's the major purchases that you need to get things moving. And the key part of it is, if you have a cash for clunkers and you tie it to some sort of domestic manufacturing production, it not only boosts consumer spending, it also boosts manufacturing activity. It doesn't have to be just a made in Canada, but you could have some type of content levels on them. So home renovation's huge. We manufacture a massive amount of those types of things in Canada. Pipes, shingles, windows, doors, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's super helpful.
Thank you, Mr.
One more.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Next, we go to Mr. Vaughn, please, for 5 minutes.
Thanks very much, and I thank you for the insight, Mr. Wilson, in particular around some of the challenges we face, but also some of the success we've had around manufacturing. As we start to restructure, one of the things we know is that the group that has been hit the hardest in this are women in the labor force, and as you start to look at bringing back, as you say, the relation or restaging the relationship between employers and employees, that's going to be a difficult one to do without supports around family care, mainly child care, but also in this case senior care. What do you see as a way forward to making sure that we get women back into the workplace as quickly as possible? What would you like to see to support manufacturing in this country?
For a long time, we've been big promoters of advancing more women in manufacturing. We have a massive skills shortage, as I mentioned. And one of the problems we have a massive skills shortage is self-identified. We don't have enough women in the workforce. Only around a quarter of the workforce is women. That's a huge problem. And they're we actually have a challenge out there to increase the number of women by 100,000 in the manufacturing environment. Our members, manufacturers across the country, provide great supports, on-site childcare, for example, at some places. So we've created working with this government and the Minister, the Status of Women. We've launched a program to try to attract more young women and girls into STEM careers, for example. And that's where it starts. We're not going to change it overnight, but we need to get more women and young girls into education programs that are directed more at STEM. Because a lot of the outcomes of those engineering jobs, accounting jobs, lawyers that manufacturers hire are reliant on STEM skills, and there's just not enough of them going in. And so if we need to fix the intake of them to be able to fix the long-term problem we've got with not enough women in the sector.
And I just want to restate that the role that family supports, and in particular childcare, but also elder care, that's going to be a critical part for returning your full labor force back into the job site.
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of the issue of reopening, there has been a lot of much of what you do takes place under provincial labor law and provincial labor codes. But is there a role for the federal government to establish guidelines for reopening so that firms aren't doing it on an ad hoc basis, but rather there is sort of a measure? Whoops, sorry about that. To measure safety, to measure the capacity for manufacturers to operate safely. Would you be open to working on federal guidelines that provincial guidelines could be leveraged off of?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you look at some of the larger provinces, say Ontario, Quebec, Manitoba, for example, where the bulk of manufacturing takes place in the country, and they have large sophisticated sectors, a lot of the companies actually work in all three jurisdictions. And so the more you can get companies who have standardized, singular regulatory approaches on anything, whether it's PPE and health and safety in the workforce, the better. You've obviously got a political issue on your hands, but certainly from a practical perspective, it makes sense to harmonize the guidelines approach as much as possible. And that's what we're trying to do in the advice we're giving to our members, for sure. In fact, most of the guidelines and advice we're giving come out of Manitoba. We have a group in Manitoba called MadeSafe, which is partly funded by the Manitoba government. And it's that's our center of expertise in the country. It's not Ontario, it's not Quebec, it's actually Manitoba. And that's what's being used for us as the guidelines for across the country.
So it's not normal for us to hear industry come forward and talk about the need for good, strong regulation, as well as investments in social programs as a way of mounting a competitive and a healthy business environment. I'm glad to hear you say that. Usually we get the cut red tape and you know, privatize everything, and let people fend for themselves. That being said, good, strong social programs and smart regulation do incur costs, both for the manufacturing basis, but also for government. As we move towards providing those supports, there is a lot of money that's been spent getting us through this pandemic, and there will be a lot of money spent recovering. How do we tax and spend our way smartly to make sure that we both create those smart regulations, create those social supports, but also create competitiveness for you to remount industry? What's the balance that you're looking to be struck?
Yeah, so first
short answer, please, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, first I'd say that smart regulations can save everyone money. The problem that most businesses have is the dumb regulations that cost everyone a lot of money, including government. So I think there's a big difference between the two. So let's be careful on that. The second thing is, look, we can't tax our way out of this. We're going to have to grow our way out of it. We need to make sure we have really smart economic policies that drive growth long term. No, if we start driving up taxes, it's going to drive investment out of the country, and that's going to cause more problems. So I'll just leave it at that, since I have to be short.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Next, we'll go back to the Conservatives, please, for 5 minutes. Mr. Viss, please. You're still on mute there, Brad.
There we go. Thank you. Just on this, on the last point raised by Mr. Wilson, really important. I don't think Canadians want a tax increase when we're trying to get our economy back. And just generally, I will say, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to ask one question, then I'm going to pass it over to MPQC. Would the Mr. Wilson, would your organization be interested in exploring a new capital cost program to perhaps help manufacturers in Canada defray some of the additional costs that they might be incurring to meet the new demands in a post-COVID world?
I think we're always interested in exploring anything that help people invest in the right ways to sustain long-term growth for the country. So we'd always be interested in those conversations.
Okay, and secondly, could you please write back to our committee? I'm very concerned. The Parliamentary Budget Officer said we don't have an overall economic plan for our country, and I believe all of us would really benefit from hearing from your organization and getting that testimony on record moving forward in more detail. Would you be able to provide us with more detail on an economic recovery plan?
We will be releasing one next week, and I'd be happy to send it to the clerk for circulation.
Thank you. That's all, Chair.
Ms. Cusey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'll continue the questioning there. So I'm very concerned that we obviously in the first phase of the pandemic, we were worried about public health and safety. Then we moved to economic supports, of course, very important. But now I feel as though we are not focusing enough on the economic recovery, both from a domestic perspective and also as well an international perspective. If I was the Prime Minister, I would be doing a complete inventory of all internal resources, everything from agriculture to energy, to textiles, to minerals, and after that, determining the internal capacity for production. What are we able to make internally? What do we have excess of that we are able to trade internationally? Who will those trade partners be based upon who we've seen in good faith throughout the actions of this pandemic, as well prior to the pandemic? And what will we have to bring internally so that we are prepared for the future to be more self-reliant in the God forbid, the face of another pandemic, other horrible international incident, or even continued peacetime? What would you said you have a plan coming out next week. Can you say even the 3 things you would do along this line? I'm just concerned we're not moving fast enough both domestically and internationally as well. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Interestingly, all of your points in terms of what we should be doing are part of our plan. But the other thing that's really interesting is a lot of these aren't new. We've been talking about this. I've been for this committee talking about some of these things before. So I guess now we have a platform where people actually seem to care a lot more about what's made in Canada. The one thing that I would say outside of what you said, yes, we need to be competitive. Yes, we need to invest in technology. Yes, we need to invest in our people. Two other things I'll say. One, we need to look at where we have strategic advantages and grow off of those. We do not do a good job in this country of taking advantage of our opportunities that we have in front of us. And a couple, for example, agri-food is massive. We undervalue agri-food production in this country. And I think during this crisis, we've seen how important it is that we can put food on the table. Secondly, energy and oil and gas, but beyond oil and gas, renewables, wind, solar, all of it. We are an energy superpower.
We are.
Board. And we need to figure out, and the world's always going to need more energy. We need to figure out a way to make sure it's green, clean, and we can provide it to the world because we can provide it, I believe, more energy efficiently than anyone around the world. So how do we develop that? And then the third piece would be around technology itself. We manufacture awesome technologies in this country, whether it's software, hardware, and the integration of them, two of them. And then how do we use that and leverage it to create a domestic advantage for our industry so we can compete against the rest of the world? So those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about. And then how do we compete better with our supply chains? How do we stand up better supply chains across North America to compete against China and other parts of the world? It's been a long-standing frustration that we seem to just want to be able to import everything in our free trade agreements, not just with one political party, but all political parties over time, seem to be about getting our natural resources to market instead of how do we build more value here and export the value of product.
And a focus on necessity and economy rather than ideology. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
And thank you, Ms. QC. Next, we're going to go to Mr. Housefather for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Can I just ask, since I have it at 5:59, can you tell me, do I really have 5 minutes?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Wilson, as somebody who came from a sector where I worked for a manufacturing company where we manufactured out of choice the vast majority of our products in North America because of the high quality of product we could make here despite the lower costs in the Far East, I want to thank you and your organization for all that you do. It is really, really important. We've talked a lot about the government programs that have been rolled out that your organization has taken advantage of. I want to give you the opportunity to talk to us about if you could add or change one program, what would it be? What would your membership most want to see?
Well, the biggest one is the wage subsidy. I talked about that. The other one that's out there at the federal level that will not work for our sector at all that I didn't mention is the rent subsidy program. I think it's not going to be it won't work for us. In part, it's because it's too small. And secondly, there's very little incentive in it for landlords themselves to go out and get the subsidy on behalf of the tenant. That's going to be the big one that will come up as that program opens up, that we probably need to see that changed so that the tenants are applying the same way the wage subsidy works.
Thank you very much. Of course, if you look at it and you give the money to the tenants, then you're not necessarily making sure that it goes to rent. There's a bit of a difficulty there, and we also know that this is in provincial jurisdiction. And if we want to make sure that the landlords are required to apply for these programs to benefit the tenants, the provinces actually need to act in concert with the federal government as we develop the program together. But I appreciate the sentiment. I've been working very hard, and I know my colleagues from all parties have been working hard in trying to convince landlords in our ridings to participate in the program. I think it's a very important thing to help manufacturers and other Canadian businesses. Another passion that I know we share, having looked at comments that you've made, and relates to our trade relationship with the United States. Our biggest trading partner, the partner that we need the most to be on side with. What are the steps that you believe this government should take to improve, the fact that we reached the revised NAFTA, incredibly important. The fact that we have been able to work out with the United States, that PPE has been able to be imported from the United States, very important. What would you say the number one priority for your group would be in terms of our relationship with the United States?
fully implementing the New Deal. There are huge opportunities in the New Deal that I think are undervalued by people. The increased regional content value, for example, in automobiles could be a huge win for Canada underneath the deal. We're working with Minister Ng's office to try to get the committee set up specifically on SMEs, on regulations, and on industrial competitiveness. Those will be foundational to make sure that we have the right implementation strategy around those. So yeah, get it going, get implemented, and let's see how we can take advantage of it. And most importantly, we can't look at this as how are we competing against Mexico and the United States. This has got to be about how are we leveraging this deal to compete with the rest of the world. If we're not doing that, I think we're missing the boat on what the idea of the whole regional integration really is.
So I agree with you. This has to be a Team North America type of approach. And I also believe that people greatly undervalue the improvements that were made to this deal and how important this deal is to Canada foundationally. My last question, I know I'm looking at the chair, and I know I'm running out of time. PPE, how important it is to, we've talked about, and you've already talked about how important it is to domestically supply the PPE we need. And we can also take that as a North American approach and have an agreement with the US and Mexico related to PPE importation. Can you just talk a little bit more about how Canadian manufacturers have stepped up to the plate? Because I think it's been incredible watching those in my riding that have converted their premises to make PPE equipment. And I just want to give you a chance to herald again your group.
So look, and I know we're really running out of time here. So look, the hats off goes to the companies themselves. As soon as the call went out from the Prime Minister and premiers from right across the country, our members flooded us with calls about how could they get involved, what could they do. A lot of them weren't asking for money, they weren't asking for anything. They just immediately switched for one reason. It was Canada. Canada and the healthcare workers needed it. And I talked to companies from coast to coast who weren't looking for contracts, they weren't looking for anything, but really just to give their capabilities, their expertise, and their support to their communities. And that was it. Thousands of companies from across the country did this. Interestingly, though, the frustration has been and still continues to be, in some cases, they switched over, they made these things. I was talking to a company today in Ontario who made shields, and they have thousands. I think he told me 10,000 of them sitting in their factory that they can't get rid of because they can't get Health Canada clearance, even though they were promised it would be done rapidly, and they've been sitting there for weeks. So it hasn't been as smooth as we wanted, but the companies still stood up. They still fought through all the barriers that they had, and a lot of it they're just giving away. They're giving it to local hospitals and healthcare workers and first responders and such as police and others. So it's been an amazing response, and I think Canada should be very proud of the sector and what we've done. And the other thing I'll say, because this is probably the last comment, Chair, thank you, all of you. All parties have stepped up. You've listened to the support that we've asked for, and frankly, across the board from all political stripes, from all governments, you've done a terrific job. So thank you for everything you've done as well.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Wilson. Thank you, Mr. Housefather.
President Louis Chabot.
This is Louis Chabot, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, because we do not have time for other parties to ask questions, would it be possible to have 5 minutes for the Bloc and the NDP? I believe it's 6:05. I think we could keep going so that it's fair for all parties. Madame Chabot, the rules say that your next turn will be 2.5 minutes, so we could do that. You could have 2.5 minutes and Ms. Kwan too, if all the others agree. So do we have unanimous consent to move ahead like that?
Vous avez 2 minutes.
You have 2.5 minutes, Ms. Chabot. Go ahead. Thank you. My question is for Mr. Kihani. Listen, we're talking about e-commerce. We are talking about having numeric skills. We know that it is more and more important now. It's important to buy locally. E-commerce is important, digital skills. But to do all that, it's very important to have access to internet in remote regions. So why is it, in your opinion, that we don't have that? Is it because it doesn't bring enough revenues to shops that are in the cities in comparison to shops that are in the regions? Is it because government need to invest more? Because we've been talking about that for a long time and it needs to be resolved.
Yes, Ms. Chabot, I completely agree. The telecom infrastructure in Canada is definitely an area of improvement. There are developing countries that have better telecom infrastructures, to be honest, in terms of remote areas, in terms of the price of access to internet. That's definitely an area that we need to improve on. Most observers that I've seen, I'm not a complete expert in the area of economics of telecom.
Qu'est-ce qui l'empêche, à votre avis?
But why is it that we don't have that? Why don't we have that, in your opinion?
As I was saying, most observers I've seen point to a lack of competition in the telecom sector as a driver of this situation in Canada. I believe that the technology and the capabilities are there. The companies that can do it are there, but need to be sort of attracted to invest in Canada and open up competition as much as possible.
But does it have to do with revenues also? Because in urban centers, we don't really ask ourselves that question, but in rural regions, and you know, Canada is a big country, it could be seen as an investment and not spending. Is it because it doesn't generate enough revenues?
I don't think that is the only problem, although in remote areas that might be a problem. And I think by seeing it as a crucial infrastructure investment, the government support rural areas. But I think the problem is bigger than that, because even in urban centers, the prices are far too high compared to other countries.
Thank you. Ms. Kwan now for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to turn to Mr. Kahani as well. And thank you so much for raising the issue with the situation with the international students. You're absolutely correct in the sense that they pay to study here. They pay a much higher tuition. And of course, Canada looks to them as well for our immigration contributions as well. So now that they're in a tremendous time of need, it feels a little bit like we're abandoning them because they don't qualify for the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit. So to that end, you know, you've called for the government to make this change. Would you say that if you are an international student who are here in Canada, that they should also then be qualified for the CERB, like other Canadians and other temporary foreign workers for that matter, if they qualify for the program?
I believe there are students who lost income in a significant manner that does make them eligible for that particular requirement of the CERB. From what I've seen around me, people who have applied have actually got the CERB. So I think, I don't know if it will turn out later that they were ineligible, but I think they should be eligible for the CERB as well.
Thank you. I just want to turn quickly back to Mr. Wilson. We were just talking about the rent, commercial rent subsidy issue, because many people do not qualify. So from your sector or even for businesses, would you say that one of the key changes that the government needs to make is in fact allow for small businesses to apply for the rent subsidy and for it not to be tied to the mortgage?
I'm not sure about the tie to the mortgage, but certainly our recommendations to government so far, and what we'll be saying more publicly is it should be on the rentor, not the leaseholder, to do the application for the same reason as the wage subsidy program. The employer did it, not the employee directly. It's a lot easier to manage the system that way. So Anyways, we believe that it should be changed around, and it would make it a lot easier for companies, because there's very little incentive for landlords themselves to offer and
Yeah.
apply.
Yes, and on the issue about somehow if people got that rent subsidy, they won't apply it to the rent itself. I mean, the government can get around that to actually show their lease agreements, right? To show each month. And there are ways to which I'm sure the business sector can help the government to verify, in fact, that money is indeed for their commercial rent.
Thank you, Ms. Kwan. A very short answer, if you wish, Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
That's excellent. Thank you. To both witnesses, Mr. Wilson, Professor Kayani, thank you so much. You can tell how much the MPs were interested in your remarks by the extension of the time. And to my colleagues, thank you very much for the courtesy that you showed to your colleagues in doing so. Again, thank you. Your testimony will be very helpful to us as we move along with this examination. We're going to now suspend for 3 minutes to queue up the next panel. We are suspended.
Thank you.
Session. I'd like to thank our witnesses for joining us today. We have with us from Canada's Building Trade Unions, Robert Kuchrin, Chairman of the Executive Board, and from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, Leah Nord, Senior Director, Workforce Strategies and Inclusive Growth. We're going to start with Ms. Nord, please, for 10 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Just fine, thanks.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chairs, and committee members. It's a pleasure to be here before you this evening. My name is Leah Nord, and I am the Director of Workforce Strategies and Inclusive Growth at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, working in the areas of skills, the future of work, immigration, employment standards and practices, diversity and inclusion. My comments today will focus on these areas within my portfolio, speaking not only to the crisis period, but to the reopening, recovery, and return to new normal that is happening at different timings and stages across the country. The Canadian Chamber is the voice of Canadian business. We represent 200,000...
Monsieur le Président, je m'excuse.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry. Go ahead. It's for the interpretation. The interpreters are having a very hard time to hear them. There's no French at all now.
Some
I'm holding.
technical difficulties here.
It was fine on the test, I understand.
Oh, okay. Est-ce qu'on peut
Could we hear the interpreter's coordinator or the technician? Is it possible to solve it or to try to identify the problem?
It's the clerk here that the microphone is a bit too close.
Okay, did you catch that, Ms. Nord?
No, I did not. I'm sorry.
Your microphone might be a bit too close in order for
Okay.
interpretation to pick up. So if you can just bring it out a bit, just count to 10, perhaps.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
6.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Thank you. How's that?
It's a bit better for the plosive sounds.
Okay. Ms. Nord, you can restart if you wish. We'll restart the clock.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chairs, and committee members. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. My name is Leah Nord, and I'm the Senior Director of Workforce Strategies and Inclusive Growth at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, working in the areas of skills, the future of work, immigration, employment standards and practices, diversity and inclusion. My comments today will focus on these areas within my portfolio, speaking not only to the crisis period, but the reopening, the recovery, and return to new normal that is happening at different timings and stages across the country. The Canadian Chamber is the voice of Canadian business. We represent 200,000 businesses across the country, across sectors and across sizes. Our network consists of 450 chambers of commerce and boards of trade, alongside over 400 corporate members and an equal number of association members. Through the crisis, we believe that one of the most impressive aspects of the response, and what will hopefully be one of its most significant legacies, is the Team Canada approach that has been taken. The centerpiece of the Canadian Chamber's response during this crisis has been the Canadian Business Resilience Network. It is supported by government in partnership with our network and members, as well as our partner business associations. This inclusive and bilingual campaign, including a microsite, has proven to be a successful, centralized, and authoritative source of information, best practices, toolkits, and thought exchange, allowing for businesses to prepare, persevere, and eventually prosper. Looking more specifically to the labor force, and to seemingly state the obvious, the crisis has had a detrimental effect on Canada's workforce. Through the April 2020 Canadian Chamber and Stats Canada survey, called the Canadian Survey on Business Conditions, we know that Canadian businesses have undertaken many efforts to support their employees through the crisis and keep them connected to the labor force. Innovations include remote work, e-commerce, and work sharing. Nonetheless, we also learned through the survey that 40% of businesses had laid off staff and 38% of them had reduced staff hours or shifts. Stats Canada will be back in the field next week with a second round of the survey, and we look forward to gaining further insights and seeing if and how attitudes and practices have shifted as the crisis continued. Further, March and April 2020 labor force data survey indicates that since the start of the crisis, 3 million Canadians have lost their jobs, 90% of them temporarily, and more than 8 million have applied for the Canadian Emergency Relief Benefit and Canada Emergency Student Benefit. Not surprisingly, in the initial phase of the crisis, the most significant job losses were in accommodation and food service industries. Initially, populations most affected in the first phase included youth, women, and those working in less secure, lower quality jobs. Good producing sectors were most effective in April, particularly manufacturing and construction. Sectors including tourism, wholesale and retail trade, education and recreation have also experienced employment declines of up to 35%. The crisis has also compounded preceding downturns in sectors such as oil and gas and forestry, and pivots in sectors such as manufacturing and mining. It also highlighted the needs in transport and warehousing, health, human resources, and food retail, underscoring the importance of the country's essential workers. As I turn my comments to the reopening and recovery periods, I will underscore that many businesses across the country, across sectors and sizes, are still very much in crisis mode. For example, Monday is June the 1st, and even in light of recent announcements such as the Canadian Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance for small businesses, many members are wondering if and how they are going to make the rent this coming month. Specific to the reopening period, the Canadian Chamber has developed a series of recommendations, including the importance of leaning on international best practices and ensuring interprovincial alignment. We also believe that although emergency temporary financial support programs have been needed and in fact crucial to help companies and individuals stay afloat during the pandemic, there is also a need longer term to ensure sustainable public finances. We also appreciate that there continues to be more questions than answers right now. The crisis has shown us that the best public policy is made when it widely draws upon the advice of civil society, including businesses both large and small across sectors. The conversations need to start now in a structured manner to ensure that governments at all levels are receiving the best possible advice to minimize unintended consequences. An excellent example of this is the creation and composition of the federal government's COVID-19 Supply Council, which includes representatives from business, labor, many sectors and nonprofits, and includes the voices of academics, women, and Aboriginal business. As we look further to recovery and a return to the new normal, we need to get Canadians back to work. Canada's workforce will simply not be the same as we move into recovery. In the span of a few short months, we went from one of the tightest job markets in recent history to unprecedented job losses. Unemployment may not return to pre-crisis levels at any point soon. Available jobs and skills required will shift. Employers might increasingly look to automation to maintain operations during future crises and reduce risk. Canadians will need reskilling, upskilling, and skills training programs to get them back to work. Education and training will also change, including more online and hybrid learning, importance on durable skills, with a focus on both work-integrated learning and lifelong learning. Ensuring that all Canadians have opportunities to participate in the recovery will be essential for inclusive growth and widespread job creation. With this, the Canadian Chamber has three main recommendations. The first is to ensure inclusive growth in the recovery period. And in the first instance, this means that there needs to be inclusive voices represented at public policy and discussion forums. I'd given the example of the federal government's COVID-19 Supply Council. This must be replicated at all tables and levels of government, as well as in boardrooms and leadership meetings, at labor and union tables, in occupation, health, and safety committees, and in business operations and return to work discussions. Secondly, Canada needs a comprehensive review of the employment insurance program. In prefacing this recommendation, I would like to say two things. Firstly, this is a long-standing recommendation of the Canadian Chamber, and we have any number of policy resolutions over the years on this issue. Secondly, with this recommendation, we are not diminishing the incredible work of the Federal Public Service in response to the crisis in developing and implementing programs such as the Canadian Emergency Wage Benefit, the Canada Emergency Relief Benefit, and the Canada Emergency Student Benefit. Quite the opposite, they all deserve widespread praise. Yet we do believe that it is telling that these programs were necessarily situated outside of the EI program framework. Moving forward, we need to identify the reform needed to build a system that can respond to current and future workforce needs, ensure Canadians remain connected to the labor force, and that it includes a strong upskilling and reskilling training component. Our third recommendation to get Canadians back to work is to use local labor market information and real-time data to develop labor market solutions that are created by business for business, led by sectors for sectors, and tailored by communities for communities. In doing so, we advocate the use of chambers of commerce and boards of trade as local hubs for employer collaboratives that can provide facilitated time and space for business to share, collaborate, and plan. These are unprecedented times, and there is no playbook to turn to. Policy and programming recommendations for recovery at this point are conjecture at best. There needs to be a thoughtful, inclusive, and measured approach to the response, and this is exactly what the Canadian Chamber's proposal, called the Talent Pipeline Management and Economic Resiliency Program, is designed to do. Just very briefly, because I'm aware of the time, this is a program that prioritizes alignment between education, training, support, and workforce systems. It's a program that has been implemented by our colleagues in the US across 33 states. It's been taken place at the state level as well as regional level. Large cities and smaller rural towns have been involved. It has even been used by individual companies in their internal business practices. Involved is the creation of employer collaboratives in a wide range of sectors, including hospitals, healthcare, construction, manufacturing, utilities, education, cybersecurity, fintech, and IT. It has also been used to form collaboratives organized along supply chains, and it's proven to be self-sustaining after initial seed funding. During the crisis, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation has been infusing its academy curriculum with a recovery focus and using a national learning network to share challenges, solutions, and best practices. There's been success in retraining workers in sectors, keeping them tied to their sectors, as well as identifying worker crosswalks, identifying upskilling, reskilling, and career pathways. The overarching benefit of this is that it allows for managing and mitigating both major expansions and contractions in the economy and workforce. It builds resiliency and it future-proofs workforce planning. With that, I'll thank the committee members for the opportunity to appear today and look forward to answering any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nord. Mr. Kucherin, you have the floor for your opening statement. You have 10 minutes, sir. Go ahead. Just unmute your mic there, Mr. Kucherin. There you go.
How's that? Good evening, Chair and members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity for me to address this committee and the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Robert Kucherin. I'm the chairperson of Canada's Building Trade Unions, an organization representing 14 international unions that represent over 500,000 highly skilled and highly trained workers in the construction, maintenance, and fabrication industries in Canada. Our more than 500,000 men and women are employed constructing everything from a garden shed through to the largest mega projects in Canada. We have members employed at virtually every refinery, pulp and paper mill, potash facility, generating station, nuclear plant, and such commercial and institutional construction that includes roads, bridges, overpasses, hospitals, and all forms of civic infrastructure. The construction and maintenance sector annually represents approximately 14% of Canada's GDP. Our work is not just done on the job site, but also in a number of facilities and fabrication shops that are incorporated into the structures that we work on. And once structures are built, we are often later employed in the operation, renovation, maintenance, and repurposing. We are the single largest trainer of apprentices in Canada. Each year, we invest over $300 million of our own funds across 175 training centers to ensure our members are the safest, most skilled, and highly qualified in the industry. We work closely with our employer partners to try and ensure Canada has a future supply of highly skilled and well-trained tradespeople There are training centers which can be found in every province and every region in Canada, with the exception of Quebec, which has their own unique system, as we all know. This system allows us and our contractor partners to meet the demands for skilled trade workers for today and tomorrow. Today, Canada is facing an unprecedented health, social, and economic challenges. With our construction being deemed essential in most provinces, the CBTU members continue to be able to build the critical infrastructure necessary to keep Canada safe and healthy during this pandemic. But like many Canadians, some of our members' jobs were impacted by the crisis and continue to be as we move forward. I want to thank the government for their responsiveness to this pandemic, not only through the various ministries regularly updating and staying in contact with us, but their work on programs including CERB and the CEWS. The government's swift response, as well as their commitment to continuing to modify and adjust these benefits, is needed and help to ensure our members and Canadians do not fall through the cracks. While there are still improvements that can be made to these programs, such as including the allowance of unions utilizing their existing supplemental unemployment benefit or sub funds to top up members' wages when collecting the CERB, we do appreciate what has been done to date. When the pandemic reared its head, the organized construction industry was swift to respond with a number of safety protocols and job sites, including increased hand washing stations, sanitization of sites and trailers, and common touch areas, physical distancing, and proper PPE being made available and its use being enforced. Through continued open communication with our employer partners, health and safety representatives and members have been able to address any issues that have risen quickly. It is because of this that the numbers of cases on our job sites are minimal. We are proud of the responses of our industry because our members' health and safety has always been our utmost priority. The unionized construction sector could be used as a model for other sectors. That said, our sector has always been a leader, given the nature of our work, to ensure our members have a safe work environment, proper protocols in place, and receive training to identify potential dangers on their jobs, and of course, the proper PPE. The need for greater availability of PPE to prevent the further spread of COVID-19 remains important, and we urge the government to continue to do what they can do to obtain sources of supply to ensure the construction sector can continue to operate in a safe manner. Looking forward, as Canada comes out of this pandemic and the federal government considers an economic recovery plan, I want to remind the committee that the construction sector plays an integral role in advancing the economy, as well as we've seen this trend historically help us emerge from recessions and even the Great Depression itself. As the government stimulates the economy through infrastructure, we must recognize and be cognizant of the money spent and where and how it will be deployed in communities across Canada. Specifically, we have the opportunity to utilize our highly skilled, trained, and mobile workforce to help build a stronger and more resilient Canada as we recover from this COVID-19 crisis. We have submitted to the government a list of large, shovel-ready and shovel-worthy projects that can put people to work and create training opportunities for underemployed, unemployed, and underrepresented Canadians. The federal government has an opportunity to take the leadership role in investing and securing Canada's critical infrastructure, both in the short term to get people back to work and bolster the economy, and the long term as an economic catalyst to build the Canada we all want for future generations. The federal government can show leadership by incorporating community benefit agreements, CBAs, not only through the thought process, but more importantly, acting upon it in federally funded projects. CBAs support the hiring and training of local workers and underrepresented groups, including women and Indigenous people. They often contain provisions that enable apprenticeships, guaranteed prevailing wages, establish grounds for workplace development initiatives, provide funding and economic support for impacted communities, utilize local suppliers and manufacturers, and set forth training for minority, women, and local hiring. In provinces where CBAs have been enacted, we see, for example, the number of women entering apprenticeships and completing their apprenticeship certification is significantly increased. For example, in Newfoundland, where a number of CBAs were utilized on major construction projects, women now account for 14% of the construction workforce. And this is compared to roughly 2 to 4% across the rest of the country. When considering post-pandemic recovery, investing in local communities will lift all Canadians up. We can do that through training and skills development by providing support and assistance to organizations as well as the projects to help train Canada's future workforce through the apprenticeship system. Over the next 10 years, at least 21% of all current workforce will retire. The ability to fill this gap and meet the demands depends on the availability of workers with portable experience, skills, and qualifications in their trades. The infrastructure for providing training exists in Canada through many training centers provided by our affiliates. But without ongoing support by the government and our employers, our industry suffers. Historically, the larger construction project, the more opportunities for apprentices to learn their crafts and obtain the hours to become journey persons. A focus on apprenticeships and requiring apprenticeships on site in any infrastructure investment is key to building Canada's future workforce. In conclusion, on behalf of the CBTU, our 14 affiliates and over 500,000 members, I want to thank the government for their quick response during these unprecedented times. As the government looks past the pandemic and looks towards economic recovery, we ask that the government helps ensure that Canadian tradespeople are able to work in a safe environment according to the guidelines from applicable governments and health authorities, and which will require the continued sourcing of PPE and enforcement of safety procedures and protocols. The government must ensure that any economic recovery plan includes investing in all Canadians. This can be achieved through investing in major infrastructure projects that support Canadian tradespeople in the communities they live in by instituting community benefit agreements. This in turn will help lift all Canadians up and continue to build a better and stronger Canada. I want to thank you, Chair, and the committee members for allowing me to appear before this committee, and look forward to any questions you might have for me. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Kucherin. We're going to begin with questions now, starting with Mr. Albus, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank both our witnesses for being here today and sharing some of your expertise. Mr. Kucherin, I think I'm going to start with you. We just had the Canadian manufacturers and exporters come in, and one of the things that the testimony revealed is that traditional markets like exports, particularly energy exports, can really help us to grow our economy. Now, obviously, the building trades is going to be a big part of that. How big of a role will energy projects, specifically export capacity development, play in our eventual economic recovery from the COVID crisis, in your opinion?
Thank you for the question. Of course, we've always supported the oil industry and the development of the oil industry in Canada as a significant contributor to Canada's GDP in all sectors. As you know, our members go to work right across Canada into the Wood Buffalo area and bring back to their own communities money that's spent locally. We believe that recovery is very important, and we believe that through the pipelines that are going to be built, that's critical. We look forward to that ability to get the crude oil out of Alberta and into people that are willing to pay a fair market price for that.
Thank you for answering that. What is your opinion on the potential cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline and the impacts of that would be on the Canadian energy sector and your sector?
They're very important. Of course, I've heard Vice President Biden made those comments last week. That concerns us, as it would anybody in the construction industry. We're monitoring that, and we're doing what we can in Canada, but more importantly, stateside, to get people around those issues to listen to us.
Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate your breath of fresh air. I'd like to now move, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Nord from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Ms. Nord, we've seen such a slow uptake for the wage subsidy rather than anyone expected it, particularly the government planned for. As you represent a great many businesses, why do you think that is?
Thank you for the question, MP Albus. I think that we're seeing a number of factors at play. I think the first would be timing. The program only started on May the 1st. It was about 6 weeks after the crisis, so a number of job actions had already been taken. There is the issue around eligibility, credit where credit is due. There's movement being made, and you know, even today, as I understand, my provincial and territorial colleagues were on a call with representatives from the Department of Finance with some recommendations, again around the eligibility, about the drop in revenue. There's issues around companies and nonprofits that use third-party payment providers not being eligible, and there's, you know, other issues with the revenue job. If you, for example, you know, mergers and acquisitions through this period of time, if you haven't been in business for a year, and I know us at the Canadian Chamber, we're advocating for example, you know, for furloughed employees to allow greater flexibility with the wage subsidy in order to bring it back. I think it's important to as well, you know, we've started reopening, and it's, you know, happening at different stages and paces across the country. As we sit here in Ontario and I watch other jurisdictions, it's not even in our realm, but a reminder that many, you know, businesses were not considered essential services. They were not, you know, open, or the extent to which they could be opened will not allow them to uptake this program in a way until the reopening and recovery has really taken hold.
I take your points about the speed and the eligibility put out by the federal government on this. Now, you have written about the specific impacts of this crisis on retail and how the recovery will be different from previous ones due to those impacts. What changes from the previous recovery policy do you think government needs to look at this time?
Yes, it is. And that just was issued this week, as I referred to. Again, thank you for that question. We had done this survey, the Canadian survey on business conditions, and we were able to slice and dice the data in every number of ways, including by sectors. We've sliced it by who owns the business as well. But, you know, the retail sector, and I had said that in my comments, was hit hard, fast, and first. A lot of businesses, employees, and including business owners that were female owned in that initial stage were hit hard because of the composition of the retail sector. And historically, you know, in previous recessions, what you'll see is first sector in, first sector out, right? Or first sector back in, which we don't believe is going to happen with a lot of these. So in the first instance, it's something that I alluded to before, and it's that inclusive growth and inclusive voices at the table, right? If retail isn't at these tables in these discussions, then they can't be part of the solution. We have a consortium of 6 business associations, and the Retail Council of Canada is one. I think we're also going to have to look at how to drive consumer spending and economic development. I heard from the previous session, you know, the idea that we can't tax ourselves out of this, that we have to grow. And there's any number of ways we can do that, including getting people back into the workforce so that they have income to spend. Thank you.
Right. Now, just in regards to, you said Retail Canada is part of it. I know Retail BC has come out against the idea of what's been floated by the Prime Minister and John Horgan in my province, the Premier of British Columbia, regarding a 10-day sick leave. What is the Chamber of Commerce's opinion on this?
So
short answer, please, Ms. Nord.
Yes, we are considering it. I think that we have to discuss a difference in the short term, this reopening and recovery period, and in the longer term, as I alluded to in my comments, it would be part of a larger discussion in EI reform writ large. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Albus. Thank you, Ms. Nord. Next, we have Ms. Young for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. Very insightful information that you've given us tonight. And I did want to start with Mr. Kucherin. I am also sharing my time with my colleague, Mr. Long. Mr. Kucherin, I was so glad to hear you talk about women in the trades, and it has always been a challenge to get more women involved in the trades. And I'm wondering if you think this crisis will make that even more of a concern, or do you see this crisis as an opportunity to show young people, especially young women, that the trades are worth considering?
Thank you for that question. And it is an opportunity for us all to engage, particularly with women. As I said, through community benefit agreements, it allows greater access for women to get into the trades. As I mentioned, the success story in Newfoundland, right? That was made available because of the CBAs and the requirements for having women be a part of the workforce. When I was growing up and entering the trades many years ago, typically what happened was your dad or your uncle, took you out of the basement because you were hanging around or not playing video games, but playing Pong back then, and grabbed you by the scruff of the neck and took you to the union hall to be signed up. That doesn't exist anymore. Parents often encourage kids to be university graduates or college graduates. So with that lacking, we need somebody else to step up on behalf of women in the trades, Indigenous groups, underrepresented groups, new Canadians, all those categories. So the government has an opportunity to institute community benefit agreements as part of the infrastructure plan, as part of their funding requirements. So I think it's a great opportunity, and we can achieve the kind of results that we have achieved in Newfoundland anywhere else in Canada.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Ms. Nord, I've had a number of opportunities over the past 2 months across Southern Ontario, and I was struck by how complimentary Chamber members have been to the government's quick response to this crisis. And I think all of us can agree that it was important for us to act very quickly. I certainly loved what you said about Team Canada approach. How do you think this crisis will change the way the Chamber interacts with government and with Chamber members?
MP Young, thank you for the question. And I think this is one of the strengths of the Canadian Chamber and our network, is that we have a footprint across the country in these smaller communities. I heard questions earlier, about getting information out to the small businesses on main streets across the country, and the Chamber can really serve that purpose. As I alluded to in my remarks, we're looking to really reinvigorate the economy by using our local chambers and that network to form these collaboratives, to allow that time and space for those small and medium-sized businesses along sectors, or even just together, to have that collaborative time and space to look at labor force issues, to discuss the crisis, to share best practices among themselves and then among other chambers as well. We do a weekly webinar call that has probably between 300 and 400 members on a whole range of subjects, large, often bringing in experts from the government as well to talk about some of these programs, how to apply, so on and so forth. So that's really the strength of what the Chamber does. And I see this continuing or reinvigorating our role for Canadian business across the country. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Ms. Nord. I'll pass it on to my colleague, Mr. Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Firstly, Chair, I want to take just a few seconds to correct the record on eligibility criteria for the CECRA. The last panel, my colleague from the NDP implied, I think it's the second time now, that only mortgaged commercial property owners could apply for the CECRA. That is not true. Non-mortgage commercial property owners can apply for the CECRA. It's clearly stated on the CMHC website. Mr. Kucherman, thank you. I have a question for you. I want to thank you. I want to thank you, leaders like Matt Whalen, Steve Schumann, the CBTU, that represent workers who build and continue to build our country. My question to you is this, sir. Do you see federal investments in construction, infrastructure, and the development of emerging industries like the SMR industry in my province of New Brunswick playing a key role in restarting our economy and getting the workers that the CBTU represents across the country back to work in good, well-paying, and substantial jobs as we emerge from this crisis?
Thank you for that question, and I totally agree. I think the government has a real chance to engage with us in our list of shovel-ready projects, and that it includes your province as well. And I think those type of jobs or those type of projects are important the overall health of Canada, and more importantly, they'll contribute to the local economy and put people back to work. I know it's been slow getting back. There are industries in New Brunswick that are slowly getting back, but we're going to need critical infrastructure projects in every province, including New Brunswick, to kickstart the economy. And like I said, with certain provisions in those agreements, right, we can engage more local underrepresented groups and minority people. So.
Thank you, Mr. Coutrin. Thank you, Mr. Long.
Thank you very much.
Suite, c'est le tour de Madame Chabot pour 6 minutes.
Madame Chabot for 6 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Coutrin, I do have a question for you. You appeared before the Finance Committee. You spoke about certain conditions to fill to have government contracts, and this is normal. We want a recovery. Yes, we will be relying on infrastructure programs, but there are issues linked to the conditions in terms of workplace health and safety. My question, in this request you made, did you receive any answers from the government? And if so, to what extent do these meet the requirements in terms of getting back to business in your sector?
Thank you for the question. And as far as I understood it, what has the government done to continue with the success? Okay.
Est-ce qu'il vous a répondu dans vos demandes?
I simply want to know whether the government has met some of your demands.
We applaud the government in what they have done so far, both with the incentives like the CERB program, but also, and I realize that health and safety tends to be a provincial matter, but the federal government, through the Minister of Public Works and Procurement, right, can ensure the supply of PPE, and that supply is critical to keep our industry going. I mean, we were deemed essential, and it's because the procedures and protocols put in place with cooperation with our employer partners that we were able to keep our COVID-19 infection rate down. If you look at our industry, we're affected minimally by that, and that's in a large part because of the availability of PPE. So I'm happy with the government's actions and on making that available, and we will continue to need those levels of supplies in construction and all sectors.
Another question. I cannot avoid asking this question because you raised the issue relating to the percentage of women, the number of women in the construction industry. That's a fact in Quebec. Do you have some incentives to urge women to take part in these non-conventional jobs? Sometimes women get in, then they leave quite quickly because the working conditions they find themselves in, there is no equality, there is a lot of discrimination. Are there still measures that can be taken that you foresee at the workplace to set things straight from that viewpoint?
The percentage of the women that I mentioned in Newfoundland is very good, and that high rate still exists today. So the retention factor is very successful there. In Quebec, my own particular trade, the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, we have a very high percentage of women in our trade, and that's on a number of factors, both in the trying to attract women into the trade, but also keeping them in. And a big part of that is having the mentorship, and we have mentorship.
Voilà, c'est ça.
We have mentorship programs that help women. The best thing you can do for an apprentice is
Merci.
keep them employed, and secondly, make sure that they're that they're taken care of while employed. And by that, I mean, somebody to watch over them, somebody to say, you're okay, you're doing fine, you're okay. Somebody to have their back. And with the mentorship program that we have, we get all that. So that is helpful.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Thank you. I would have a last question for Ms. Nord. In your testimony, you spoke about the APCU, that's the student benefits. You said you might need a complete review of employment insurance. In terms of the SERB and the student benefit, we just want to make sure that beyond support to workers and students, that there should be incentives to go back to work. In your opinion, what on the fact that these benefits are they really incentives? If not, how do we make them genuine incentives?
Thank you, MP Chabot, for that question. As I said in my remarks, the Canadian Chamber feels that the emergency programs that have been put in place, be it the wage subsidy, be it the student benefit, be it the emergency subsidy, sorry, all these acronyms I don't want to use, but the SERB program as well, were important, they were necessary, and they were crucial. But as we move forward, we need to ensure that we, to the extent possible, tie Canadians to the workforce. We need to support them when they don't and aren't able to. And we feel the best way is to return to the EI program, to reform the EI program. There's been years and years of Band-Aids and a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a lot of piling on. But I think this is a real opportunity for us to revisit it and have all parties at the table, labor, government, and business, to take a look at it. Thank you.
Merci, Madame Chabot. Thank you, Ms. Nord. The last questioner for the evening will be Ms. Kwan for 6 minutes. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for your presentation. My first question actually goes to Mr. Ketron. On the issue around stimulus package, really what we really need for the government to do, of course, is to invest in an array of economic activities, infrastructure building, and you mentioned some of them. And I'm wondering, within that frame, do you see housing and the need for building housing, affordable housing particularly for Canadians, would be an important component of this infrastructure package for stimulus purposes? Sorry, I think your mute button's still on.
Again.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. And of course, we're involved in residential construction, mostly in the Greater Toronto Area, but there is a need for affordable housing, and we would support that. And I will recheck our list of shovel-ready projects, but I think that's a good point, to have the government support affordable housing. I'm all for that.
Thank you. And I wonder if perhaps after the committee, if you have any additional information that you would like to submit, please make sure that you submit it to the clerk's office, because I think it would be very helpful just to hear about that. One of the big issues, of course, across the country we're hearing, and the pandemic has really amplified the problems, is the lack of affordable housing and the homelessness crisis and the vulnerability of the people who are at risk. And so we have a national homelessness crisis, and I think that the lesson from here is really to look and see how we can address this issue in a comprehensive way, in a way that hopefully prepares us for the next pandemic. I hate to say that, hopefully there won't be one, but there may well be another one. So thank you for that. On the question of really the road to recovery for our economy, Ms. Nord. In our previous panel, we talked a little bit about the importance of supporting businesses so people can survive the pandemic. On the wage subsidy, it was many of the businesses, certainly in my own community, are saying that they don't qualify for the wage subsidy. The threshold for lost revenue is too high, and so on. And then as we enter into the economy, the issue is also raised that people might actually start to get some income and therefore cause them to not qualify for the subsidy. And then with the subsidy ending, there might be a longer period to which for people to transition into full recovery. I wonder if you can comment on that.
Yes, and I did hear that from the last panel and colleagues at the CME saying a number of their members. I was delighted actually to hear, I think it was over 50%. I had alluded to the fact that we're going back out in the field in Stats Canada. The results will be back in mid-June. It'll be really interesting to see what our members are saying. And it's not only our members, it's business across the country, because when we had first done the survey in April in a 2-week period, the wage subsidy didn't exist. We have recommended, I mean, you know, it's that revenue cliff, as everyone keeps referring to, you know, even a graduated. I heard your comments, MP Kwan, before that as well, right? Maybe it's not, you know, a 75%, but maybe it's a graduated as we go up. We also feel, and I had mentioned this before, that flexibility around this program to allow in the initial phases as we sort of graduate, you know, it's this whole dimmer switch analogy that we're not going from off to on and building up. As businesses do that, if they're able to bring back furloughed employees and get their revenue base back up slowly but surely through this process, we would welcome that. I mean, again, we're giving credit where credit is due. We went from the 10% to the 75%, you know, heard on the voice of business. And I think this continued discussion will be helpful. The other point to make, though, and I heard my colleague from CME give a date where he thought it should extend. It cannot extend forever, and we're not asking for that either. It's just through, you know, the reopening and into the recovery period. And then, as I said, we have to, you know, really keep our eye on financial sustainability in the long term as well. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the key things that I'm hearing from my businesses in Vancouver East, from the BIAs and so on, flexibility is really the name of the game, and both for eligibility and as we head into the road of recovery. So I'm really glad to hear from the panel witnesses of both panels actually supporting this approach. I'd like to touch on the issue around return to work, because there are some issues with respect to sick leave. People are worried about the lack of sick leave. There's some people in the business or business sector to which some workers that do not have access to sick leave. I had constituents who had to resign their job in the early phase of COVID because they couldn't get sick leave, and they were worried about what that could mean, both for themselves and equally important for their coworkers in terms of potential spread. And so as we're advocating very strongly, and we're glad to hear that the federal government has made a commitment to work on this 10-day sick leave issue. I'd like to turn to Mr. Kekkerin on this from labor perspective. How important is paid sick leave for the workers?
Short answer, if you could, sir.
In the construction industry, we don't have sick leave. The nature of our business is not to have sick days with our partners. I mean, it's for those industries that do negotiate sick benefits into their agreements. God bless them. I support that. But the nature of construction, we don't have seniority. We don't have sick benefits. We get paid really good wages and benefits, but you get paid for an honest day's work, good wages. So it's a little bit foreign to me.
Thank you, Mr. Kutrin. Thank you, Ms. Kwan. And thank you, Ms. Nord. This has been a very instructive and insightful session. We very much appreciate you being with us and sharing your expertise and that of your membership.
Order, Chair.
We have a point of order from Mr. Viss.
Just before the meeting ends, I just wanted to raise the fact that when we had officials from IRCC and ESDC appear before the committee and discussed labor market impact assessments, immigration numbers, that they committed to providing the committee within 10 business days a list of immigration figures and LMIA figures. Could I please request that you, Chair, follow up with the relevant witnesses and provide that information to the committee, please?
I can do that, Mr. Viss, but I think I also have an update as well for you on that. Yeah, both departments have confirmed that the response is in its final stages of approval and should not take much longer. But yes, I will follow up, and I do expect that you're going to have an answer fairly shortly.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. No, you're quite welcome. With that, colleagues, enjoy your weekend. We'll see you Monday. We're adjourned.
See everybody.